Hi there, and welcome to today's episode. I'm excited you're here because we're talking about A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. Whether it's a book you devoured as a kid or one you've heard about but never read, I think you'll find there's so much to unpack. This isn't just a children's book, so grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's dive in. When A Wrinkle in Time came out in 1962, it was unlike anything people had seen. Imagine a time when children's literature was dominated by stories of everyday life or fairy tales with clear moral lessons. And then along comes this book, one that blends science fiction, fantasy, and big, almost philosophical questions about love, individuality, and evil. It was groundbreaking, but also controversial. Did you know it was rejected by at least 26 publishers before it found a home? They thought it was too complicated for kids and too out there for adults. But once it hit shelves, it won the Newbery Medal and became a beloved classic, and for good reason. Let's start with Meg Murray. I think what makes Meg so relatable is how utterly imperfect she is. She's awkward, moody, and quick to lose her temper. She doesn't feel beautiful or smart enough, especially compared to her family, and I think most of us can see a little of ourselves in her. Who hasn't had those moments of self-doubt? But what makes Meg so compelling is that she grows, not by becoming someone else, but by leaning into who she already is. Her stubbornness, her love for her brother, her refusal to give up, those are the things that make her a hero. There's a moment later in the story where she faces IT, the embodiment of evil on the planet Camazotz. IT is this massive, pulsating brain that controls everything. And Meg realizes that the only way to save Charles Wallace is by being herself, flaws and all. She uses her love, fierce, messy, unconditional love, to break IT's control. It's such a powerful moment because it flips the script on what it means to be a hero. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be real. I think back to when I first read this as a kid. Meg's struggles felt so familiar. I was shy and always second-guessing myself, and seeing her succeed made me feel like maybe I could too. And honestly, revisiting the book as an adult, it hits even harder. It's a reminder that we don't outgrow our insecurities, we just learn to navigate them differently. Now, let's talk about the Mrs. W's, Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Which. These three characters are such a delight. They're funny and strange, but also wise and mysterious. Mrs. Whatsit, for example, starts off as this odd, slightly bumbling figure wrapped in old clothes. But when she transforms into a celestial being with enormous wings, it's breathtaking. It's a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that even the most unassuming people can have extraordinary gifts. Mrs. Who is another favorite of mine. She speaks in quotes, lines from Shakespeare, Dante, and even Einstein. It's such a unique way of communicating, and it gives her this timeless quality, as if she's pulling wisdom from across history and cultures. And then there's Mrs. Which, who's the most mysterious of the three. Her elongated speech and ethereal presence make her feel larger than life. Together, they guide Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin on their journey, but they never take away their agency. They're not there to solve the problems for them, they're there to empower them. What I love about these characters is that they embody the idea of mentorship. They don't sugarcoat the challenges or promise an easy path. Instead, they offer tools and wisdom while letting the kids figure things out for themselves. It's a great reminder that guidance isn't about control, it's about support. And then there's Camazotz. I have to say, this part of the book gave me chills. Camazotz is a planet ruled by IT, where everyone is forced to conform. Every house looks the same, every child bounces their ball in perfect rhythm, and if you don't fit in, you're reprogrammed. It's an eerie vision of what happens when individuality is erased for the sake of order. There's a scene where a boy drops his ball out of sync, and his mother rushes him inside, terrified of what will happen. It's such a small moment, but it's so powerful. It makes you think about the ways we're pressured to conform in real life, whether it's at school, work, or even on social media. Camazotz is an exaggerated version of those pressures, but it feels uncomfortably close to home. The contrast between Camazotz and the other worlds in the book is striking. While places like Uriel are filled with light, color, and freedom, Camazotz is gray, oppressive, and rigid. It's a stark reminder of what we lose when we trade individuality for uniformity. What really ties this story together is its exploration of love as the ultimate force for good. It's not just a romantic idea, it's woven into the fabric of the story. When Meg faces IT, it's not logic or strength that saves the day. It's her love for her brother, Charles Wallace. That love is what breaks IT's hold on him. It's messy, raw, and imperfect, but it's enough. This theme of love as a form of resistance feels so relevant today. In a world that often feels divided, this book reminds us that connection and compassion are our greatest strengths. It's such a simple idea, but it's delivered with such sincerity that it stays with you long after you've finished reading. So why does A Wrinkle in Time still matter? I think it's because it speaks to universal truths. It reminds us to embrace our imperfections, to stand up against forces that try to diminish us, and to hold on to love even in the darkest moments. And it does all of this while taking you on an adventure through space and time. If you haven't read this book, now's the perfect time to pick it up. And if you have, I'd encourage you to revisit it. There's always something new to discover. Whether it's a line of dialogue that resonates differently or a theme that feels more relevant as you grow older. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this episode inspired you, share it with a friend or let me know your thoughts. What's your favorite moment from the book? What did it mean to you? Let's keep the conversation going. And until next time, happy reading.